So if you are a regular listener, watcher, follower of Ron Siegel Radio, you probably remembered Michael Hickman was on a few weeks ago. And after the broadcast, we were chatting about some of the various issues going on, because he's one of the smart guys that comes in to visit us. And, I'm really good at listening. So he's dealing with some, I guess the best thing is headaches that come up in real estate transactions, or challenges.
Sure, challenges. That's a good way to put it.
Challenges. Yeah. And one of them that he and I got to chatting about after and during the breaks was solar. So Michael Hickman, Seven Gables, is with us. We're going to chat a little bit about solar, and everybody talks about it. It's just a blanket statement, Michael, that it's a great thing and everybody should be doing it.
Right, and I think for the right I have solar.
Okay.
I have solar in my house, and in the right situation, in the right house, and how much energy you're using, sure, it can certainly be beneficial.
And something that kind of goes with almost everything. I've talked about this many times, that even loan programs, and I was in the industry way back when with the fallout. And yes, I did promote the pick-a-pay loan because it was good for the right person.
Right.
It wasn't good for everybody.
Right.
And that's the issue, is sometimes you get bad applications of a great product.
Right. And sometimes people are making uninformed decisions, I guess is a way to put it, right?
Yeah.
You're walking through Home Depot, or you get the knock on the door, and they start trying to,
walking out of Costco.
Exactly. And not necessarily knowing the product, as you kind of already stated. So.
If they don't know the product, they don't know your situation.
Right.
Because you might be a single senior citizen sitting in a condo or maybe it's your 5-bedroom house that you haven't moved out of.
Right.
But you're probably not going through a huge amount of electricity in that property.
That's exactly. That's my in-laws. They live in a 4,000 square foot home in Fallbrook, and they're not going through the same energy that, my 4-person family is going through. Right?
Or maybe that they went through 20 years ago.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. So the issue becomes that, it's not a blanket. It's not one size fits all. You really have to look at each individual and see what that means. But how does being that this is your world, realtors come into a situation and they're charged with sharing the information.
Right.
And my guess is, because I would say that this fits me, I'm not an expert in solar. I'm not an expert in electricity usage.
Correct. Yep.
And how do you guide somebody that way?
So I think, let's talk maybe about the list side first.
Okay.
Just because that's where initially it's going to come up, right? Is as we're taking the listing, what we advise our agents to do is be asking these questions. We are supposed to be asking some of those questions that are in our listing contract, right? And there's a paragraph in our listing contract that talks about that. So let's get that information early. That's the best advice on the listing side. Get your prelim early to see if there's any UCC1 recorded against the property.
You're getting a technical on us, Michael. Prelim is what?
Preliminary title report.
Okay, preliminary title report.
Right. And then your UCC1 fixture filing, which often, if there's solar panels, because that's personal property, it's going to get recorded against the property, right? And that's going to have to get lifted or released and re-recorded when you close for the lender, right?
Right.
So as you start doing some of those investigatory discovery questions, right? You're going to get to know all this stuff up front, right? Do they have solar, and then the next question is, what type of agreement do they have? Do they own it? Is it leased? Is it a power purchase agreement? Those are the three that I'm most commonly seeing in transactions right now. If they own the unit and they've purchased it outright, or they financed it, have they leased the system so they don't own it, they're paying regular lease payments, or are they just simply purchasing the power and they don't own the unit and it's not a lease, they're just paying for the power that's being produced by the system?
Now, most solar companies, when they come out, the salespeople are going to be giving us the context that it's going to add value to your property. And they'll probably use the word, it always adds value.
Correct.
I won't use that word because I don't know that anything fits into the category of always.
Right. And you probably know this better than I, but unless you own it outright, it's not going to be taken into account for the appraisal, right? A leased unit or one that's operating under a power purchase agreement is not going to bring true value as far as appraisals go.
Now, on your perspective, because talk a little bit about your role with the company first.
So I'm our in-house attorney. So I've
Okay.
been with the company for about 4.5 years.
Not giving legal advice on Ron Siegel Radio.
Not giving legal advice. So I'm our in-house attorney, and then I'm our general manager. So I see both sides. I get a lot of questions from agents, a lot of just, hey, want to confirm that I'm kind of heading in the right direction, or I'm asking the right questions, sort of things. And then because I'm still a manager, I'm guiding them in their business development as well. So I see both sides.
So you're seeing one of the things that you get to see that many of us don't is when there's a, I wouldn't say conflict, but when there's a
friction point.
That's a better term.
Yeah.
Friction point. You get to deal with that.
Yeah. I probably will touch base with agents on, I'm going to guess 300 to 500 sides a year.
Wow.
So a lot. I see a lot. Yeah. It's so unfortunate. What I think what it allows me to do is funnel that back down to our group, because I get to talk to a lot of our agents. They have direct access to me. So.
And that was one of the beauties of having you come on with us today, was the idea that you can share some of these friction areas.
Right.
And, one of the things that you're doing, obviously, because of your position in the company, is you're able to go out, you're educating your agents.
Correct. Yeah.
So you understand when you, and this is another one of those comments that I make that the realtors don't make. When you're dealing with your best friend's dog walker's brother's mother, who did a transaction in 1995, but still has a real estate license, they may not be up to date on everything that's going on, and may not have, all the practical experience of what's happening in the marketplace. That's why I believe that the barrier to entry into real estate should be significantly higher than it is today, so that you get the professional out there. I mean, you don't want to go to a cardiac surgeon and say, I just went through my first class of med school, undergrad, and I'm going to operate on your heart right now. Right? That's not the way it works. Well, this is your largest purchase in most cases.
Right.
This is your largest financial transaction.
That's correct. Yeah.
And you need somebody that's going through some of this education that you're sharing.
Right. Yeah. 100%. We have the conversation all the time with our group. Yeah.
Yeah. So and solar, 6-7 years ago, maybe less, I didn't understand everything. I still don't understand everything there is to solar, but there was a very great program, I thought, that was the Hero program. And, there were some, again, bad applications for a very good product. And we're seeing now some of the consequences of that.
Correct.
And I want to chat with you, because there's probably some of those programs, some of those folks that did the Hero loan or the Hero solar, whatever they want to call it, or energy upgrades.
Yeah. How
do we sell that house? We'll talk about that when we come back. Continuing our conversation. Michael Hickman, Seven Gables, is with us. We're sharing stories and issues that you need to be careful of or be aware of. I would say, but careful might not be the right word, but it's education. How can you make an educated decision if you don't get educated? And since 2010, that's been our mission at Ron Siegel Radio, is to educate you, not selling stuff here on this program. So before the break, we were talking about the Hero program, and I don't know if there's a huge amount of folks out there. They were doing a huge push on it, about 10 years ago. Do you see a lot of the Hero programs coming through?
I'm not seeing a lot. I've seen a handful, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, it's just one of those items. Now you made the catch on this one, or the area to be aware of is to.
Right. So with a Hero or a PACE loan, it gets assessed with your property taxes. So in the industry, we're pretty used to, as real estate agents, when we, on the buy side, for example, we're going to review the preliminary title report just to see if there's any exceptions, easements, et cetera. And so we're used to identifying those items, and then we see the deeds of trust or the loans on the property. Well, this is a part of the property taxes, typically on the preliminary title report. So sometimes we can miss it, and we're not seeing that extra lien or loan against the property.
Sure.
And a lender is going to require that it typically get paid off. So it's usually not an issue. But if it's an all cash deal, it's possible that it doesn't get paid off at closing and just gets prorated as part of the normal proration of property taxes. So we've had that issue come up where buyer takes possession and their property taxes are a little higher than they were anticipating because they're still paying on this Hero or PACE loan.
That's one of the benefits that the agents at Seven Gables have with you, is that you're sharing, you see these things.
Right.
How many agents are there at Seven Gables?
About 450 right now.
So you look at 450 agents, and say 2/3 of them, doing transactions at any given time.
Right.
So you're going to be seeing a lot of transactions coming across.
Right. And then we were talking before the show that I do a class a couple times a month on forms, which is all this stuff, but it's not we're going to read the entire form sort of class. It's, hey,
Right.
how do we avoid these sorts of issues sort of class. So
we talked about the three different types of solar, and
right.
I'm guessing that the power purchase agreement probably is the easiest one to deal with because it's most straightforward. You're going to have to pay.
Yeah. So the ones that I've seen is you start at a base price per kilowatt hour, and every year it usually increases by, I've seen it about 2.9%, and you're basically just paying for the production. So in winter months, usually your bill's going to be a little less. In summer months, it's going to be a little more because there's more production, obviously, in the summer. And if you exceed that amount, you hop back onto the grid.
So here's the question I'm going to throw at you as a buyer. Okay, so I go out and I'm energy conscious, and I look at a property, and I'm looking at a 3,000 foot house, and it's got, I don't know, say 25 panels on there. Because the family that's moving out, it's the nuclear family, mother, father, a couple kids. They might even have that Tesla in the garage.
Yep.
Pool in the backyard.
All right.
And they're using, what they need. My wife and I move in, and we think that we're going to get a $300 a month benefit, but we were only using $200 a month, and we don't really see that benefit. Now, do you get those people coming back at you saying, hey, something, I didn't get the benefit I thought I was going to get?
So we've had one recent situation, without getting too detailed, where the buyer got the power purchase agreement. It's a solar city, so Tesla got the power purchase agreement, had all the information there, but it produced way too much power for what she's using. I mean, by thousands of kilowatt hours. I don't know what the price point is exactly, but it comes out to a couple $1,000s a year more than if she was just on the grid from the beginning. But there's no context for it, right? You just see what it produces per year.
Sure.
So really the key is that the buyer, if they have any questions whatsoever, contact the solar company and get some more information on it. I mean, as you said at one point, like, real estate agents are not solar panel agreement experts. It's not, it's outside of our scope.
Sure.
But our advice can be, go ahead and call the solar company and dig in, do your due diligence, and figure out if it's worth it for you.
Is there a standard form for that nowadays? They're basically letting you know that there's solar and that you should be doing due diligence.
So there's advisories. There is a solar panel disclosure that just came out in December.
Okay.
CAR brought it out. What we're finding in practice is that most sellers don't know the answers to the questions. So it's not as effective as we would like it to be, because again, they're not experts either. And they don't always know every detail of the product. If they own it outright, that's kind of the easiest question to answer. But, the lease and the power purchase, not all of them understood exactly what that meant when they entered into the agreement. So there is a disclosure, but we're not seeing it right now. In the first 4 months it's been available, as effective as maybe California Association of Realtors would like it to be, because it's just, they don't know all the answers to those questions.
Well, as a consumer advocate, just from a 30,000 foot level, we've all played telephone, right? So if the seller listened to the sales pitch and made a purchase based on that, probably not in the last 6 months, because they wouldn't have done that right when they bought getting ready to sell the house, right? So it's probably 6 or more months ago. They're relaying their understanding to the agent that they hired to sell the property, who's then going to relay their understanding to the buyer's agent, who's going to then relay their understanding to the buyer.
Yep.
And it's not going to look anything like the original conversation.
Yeah, most likely. That's why it's call the solar company, get all your questions answered.
Yeah. So in my world, it would be, yes, there is solar, and here's the contact information.
Yep. And here's the document. Here's the agreement, first of all.
Right.
And then here's the contact information on the first page.
Yeah. And that to me, that makes a whole lot more sense, because even if I got the agreement, I mean, you have an advantage. You're a lawyer.
Yeah.
It was written by a lawyer, and I'm not a lawyer.
Right.
Right. So,
and again, you don't have any context as a buyer. Okay, well, that 15,000 kilowatt hours it's going to produce, is that good? Is that bad? Is that
I don't even know. I have no idea how much my house uses right now.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, I get the bill, I pay the bill. I know how much dollars it is. I don't know kilowatt hours, right? I mean,
exactly.
I have to write a check for it, or put it on the payment program, or whatever, the whole thing.
Right.
But that's the way it works. So,
right. It's tough. So it has created some issues where somebody gets in and is using nowhere close to the amount of power that's being produced, and they feel like they weren't given all the accurate information.
Which is kind of challenging because you know that, you know, the issue is you have to realize everybody's unique.
Right.
Right. I mean, I'm not buying a 4-bedroom house for the same reason. You know, just looking at us, I don't know. You look like you're a bit younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I buy a 4-bedroom house and you buy a 4-bedroom house, it's probably for different reasons.
Sure.
Right. I might be buying this so my grandkids have a place to come. Do you have grandkids?
No.
See, there you go.
2 kids. No
so
grandkids.
Right. So see, I mean,
Yeah.
that's my point.
Yeah.
So the usage of the solar is completely different.
100%.
One of the things, you know, I don't like the contracts and all that other stuff. I like, you know, stories.
Mm-hmm.
Any exciting ones that you come to mind?
Well, one of them was the one I just shared. We've also had situations where the seller has a leased solar,
okay,
and is saying, "Hey, I paid it off. Buyer, no problem. It's paid off." Only to find out that what they did was they prepaid the lease payment. They didn't buy the unit. So there's some confusion there as to what a payoff means, right? Because a lot of these contracts allow you to prepay when you're selling your home. You can prepay partially or all the remaining payments, usually at a little bit of a discount. But you're not buying the unit. You're not buying the system. So there's been sellers of ours that have said, "Oh yeah, it's paid off," but really they've just prepaid the lease. They don't own the system.
They paid off the lease. They haven't paid the residual value or whatever,
Correct.
whatever the balloon.
Yeah.
And I don't have it, so I don't know whether it's a balloon payment or residual value, or they just come and take it out.
Yeah. So if most of them will just allow you to pay the appraised value of the system at the time you're paying it off, and they'll go and they'll get it appraised for you.
Okay. They'll go and get it appraised for
system.
you.
Yeah.
That's a whole big issue, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And what's the value now? And usually you can't, typically what I've seen is you can't pay it off at any time. You can pay it off at predetermined times or when you're selling the house, which is why it comes up so much in our transactions. It is one of those trigger points where you could pay off or pay off the unit, prepay, et cetera. So it's just, again, it's the seller not fully understanding the process and then relaying that information, as you said, via, you know, this game of telephone. And all of a sudden the buyer says, "Hey, I'm not getting what I thought I was getting."
So what happens at that point? We're going to talk about that when we come back. Continue our conversation. We're chatting with Michael Hickman, 7 Gables Real Estate. So let's, I want to transition a little bit with Michael to the education standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the questions that I would want to do as a home buyer or seller? If I'm interviewing a realtor, what do I need to talk to them about so that they can either represent me properly or, on either side of this? Is there a methodology that I can go to? Is there something that you're recommending beyond, you know, I know we talked about just get the name and contact information.
Yeah.
Is there anything more that a real estate agent can really be doing at that point?
Well, I think, you know, on the list side, again, it's just like all of our other, I'm going to call them seller documents, anything that the seller is going to have to provide to the buyer, get all that done up front. Don't wait until you're under contract with the buyer to start trying to gather documents. Because typically once we're in escrow, if we have a friction point, it's a little bit more difficult to resolve. Right?
There's not anybody to do any homework and be prepared.
Right. And then we get this statement all the time from buyers. "Well, I just don't trust that seller anymore. I mean, they should have told me that up front." And it creates a little bit of lack of trust, which is hard to regain sometimes under contract. Right.
Sure.
And it's always easier to resolve it up front. Just like if a problem does come up, it's easier to resolve it during escrow than post-closing, of course, as well. So like the transaction I was telling you, as far as thinking they paid off the unit, but they really only prepaid the lease. It was discovered during escrow, and the seller ended up just giving a credit. They negotiated a little bit and gave a credit to the buyer at closing. So it's easier to resolve. But doing all of your work up front and even providing those documents, I mean, we at our company recommend just even having them in the supplement section of the MLS so that a buyer can, or their agent, via their agent, can take a look even before writing an offer.
Makes a lot of sense. So when you're counseling the agents, is there like a checklist that they go through and say, okay, is there a pool? Oh yeah, that's an easy one, right? Is there an air conditioner? Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. Is there solar? Because, you know, I wouldn't even know. I mean, I'm not going to, I'm a little oversized, maybe a lot oversized. I'm not getting on Google Earth to go and look on the roof and see if there's panels.
Right. We don't have a broker checklist, if that's the question. A lot of our agents have created their own pre-listing checklist, though, where they go through and they'll ask all those questions. Yeah.
And that way they can then put it in. But that as a consumer, then I know that if I'm sitting at a table and it doesn't matter if it's at my house, a conference room, at your office, wherever, and I see an agent with a checklist, to me, it just says professional.
Yeah. They know their stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Same thing on the buy side. When that buyer's agent is doing that full consultation with you or interview, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same thing on the buy side. Sure.
And so if you're a consumer out there, those are just telltale signs, right? The professional is prepared. Why do they prepare? Because they don't know it? No, it's because they don't miss anything that way.
Right.
Right. I might know that I need every one of these documents when leading a lending team. I know every document that I need, but if I have a list, it just says there's less likelihood of me making a mistake.
Right.
And the agent has the same thing. If they've got on their listing when they've gone through and you say, okay, yeah, I'm signing the contract, and I don't know how to do this because yes, I do have a real estate license, full disclosure, but I'm not qualified to use it, like most people. Right. But if you've made that determination to work together. If they come out and they pull out this checklist, it doesn't say that they don't know what they're doing. It says that they are prepared.
They're thorough. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're going through and saying, okay, solar, no, pool, yes, electricity.
Yeah.
The one that I just saw the other day, does it have a tankless water heater or a traditional water heater?
Yep. We've had issues with water softeners because some of those are leased.
Sure.
All that sort of stuff. So yeah.
So it tells you now, if you don't have that, that might be the one that's your dog walker's best friend's mother who did one transaction in some decade.
Yeah.
Right. And they might not be the best solution for you.
Right. Yeah. Right? We do have a program that we call SG Certified with Seven Gables, where as part of our listing protocol, it's do your inspections up front, get your termite done, get all of your disclosures done, get the solar documents done. So we do have we call it a program called SG Certified, but it's not a item by item checklist. That's usually down at the agent level, but we do have something that we promote like that. And
it's to me, that's part of training.
Right.
And I'm a big believer that realtors should be forced by the regulators. And I'm not a big fan of regulators at all, but they should have a mentoring program, right? Go through. I mean, you're allowed to do this. I can't, right? Even though I have a real estate license, I can't go and give people legal advice on contracts,
right?
Except in a real estate contract, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars,
and 16 pages, right? Right.
I mean, something is a little odd there to me that in something that big. I mean, if I want to write a contract to sell my car, it's like a 1-page document, right? And I'm selling, you're buying. Here's the money. Here's the mileage. See you later.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't give legal advice on that document, but as a realtor, I can give legal advice on it.
Right. After passing an exam with a D+.
Yeah, exactly. And in the exam, full disclosure, there's not a darn thing on that exam that you can ever use again in your life.
Right. Yep.
Right. So the bottom line is you want to make sure so that SG certified means a lot then.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our agents do use it. Not everybody does, of course, but a lot of our agents use it, and they use it as a competitive advantage. They're saying this is everything we're going to do for you up front.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, in Northern California, it's done much more regularly than down here in Southern California, where everything is done up front, and they require you to take a look at all the documents before you even submit your offer. So that you're going in with eyes wide open. One of the things it does help us with is oftentimes we're not seeing prices renegotiated in an escrow, whether credits for repairs or whatever it may be, because they had everything when they wrote their offer.
That makes so much more sense. The only thing that I see different there is one of the comments that you made. And I don't know enough about these things, but if you're having a termite inspection done, I don't know who's paying for that. So if the property doesn't sell, you might be out a little bit more money, but it should, it's part of doing business.
Yeah, it is.
Photos you don't get reimbursed for either.
Right. And sometimes our agents pay for it. Sometimes the seller will pay for it because they can show the value. And termite inspections are either free or very inexpensive anyways. Most of the stuff that we include in that program is stuff that you have to do anyways at some point during the transaction. We're just kind of doing it up front. So.
Which makes a lot of sense. And if you've been watching Ron Siegel Radio for any length of time, we've had John and Melissa Hammond come on here from Hammond Inspections, and they actually do a certified pre-owned home inspection. Right. So that's part of the package as well. So you can say, okay, this is what there was. Now here's the receipts for the things that we fixed.
Yep.
And it just makes, I think, makes for a cleaner process.
Yeah, I think it does. A lot of our agents will say the same thing. And then you can go and knock out some of the little things that always come up in inspections, right? The water heater bracing, things like that come up almost every time. And you just knock out a little punch list. You don't have to spend a tremendous amount of money, but you just less friction when you get to that process in the transaction.
So when your lender comes in to do the appraisal, you don't have the double strapping on the water heater. You're not missing your carbon monoxide and your smoke detectors.
Exactly.
And you don't have to pay the extra $150 for a reinspection.
Right. Exactly.
Great stuff. I appreciate you coming in and sharing a little bit with us. If you have more questions, want to talk to any of our friends over at Seven Gables, give me a call at 800-306-1990, 800-306-1990.